Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the new Charlotte Tilbury bronzers and her new Desert Haze eyeshadow quad. I think that's what it's called. Yes, the Desert Haze eyeshadow quad. I meant to do this video a lot sooner for you, but my package got lost. So it finally just arrived, and so this is going to be a first impressions. I still plan on doing a bronzer roundup video where I talk about all the bronzers I've purchased recently, of which there are many, and giving you like mini reviews on them. So I'll continue to use these bronzers and give you more in-depth review at that point. But for today, this is going to be a first impressions. So just to let you know what I purchased, I got the fair and the medium bronzer, and then I also got the eyeshadow quad. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And if you're interested in what else I have on my face, it's basically a full face of Charlotte Tilbury. That's going to be listed down below in my description box. But we're just going to be focusing on these three products. And I was at the point in my makeup routine where I pulled out my Airbrush Flawless Finish powder, and I have it in the shade 1 Fair, and I was just about to powder my entire face when I remembered seeing people talk about how fair the fair bronzer is, and I thought maybe this is going to end up being more of like a setting powder color for me now that I'm using a little bit of self-tanner, now that it's summertime and I am getting a little bit of color. Maybe this one is going to be a setting powder for me. So I thought we would start there. I'm just gonna go ahead and open this up. I'll have all the prices of everything listed down below in my description box as well. But the first thing I found really interesting about these bronzers is that they're refillable, which is really great. So on the back of the compact, there's a hole here that you can pop out. So this is the bronzer compact. I'm sure you guys have all seen this. It's been all over Instagram and YouTube, but isn't that just gorgeous? There's a really nice weight to this, and I'm just gonna hold it up next to my Airbrush Flawless Finish powder. So it is considerably larger, and I love that she changed up a little bit so that it's not just an imprinting of her CT logo, but that it's actually kind of like engraved in this plastic packaging, and that there's these like sun rays. So it's obvious it's Charlotte Tilbury, but it's an updated kind of version of this compact. So I thought that was really nice and really thoughtful. The compact is magnetized, which is different from the Flawless Finish powder. This is like a click close, and now this is magnetized, so that's nice also. Oh yeah, this is very fair. There is a mirror on the inside, and now here is the fair shade. And let me just hold it up to my powder here. So again, my powder is in 1 Fair, and then here is the fair bronzer. So it is fairly pale for my skin tone to be used as a bronzer, but if you have very fair skin, this has got to be so exciting for you, because I know when I do a lot of bronzer reviews, and if I use like the lightest shade, I get a lot of comments from people who are so fair that the lightest shade is still way too dark. So hopefully this is going to be suitable for those of you out there who have troubles finding a bronzer that is fair enough for your skin tone. I think I may be able to use this kind of as a setting powder. I'm just gonna go ahead and do like a quick finger swatch. I do want to get a sense, I wanted to get a sense of the texture of this powder. It's very much like her Airbrush Flawless powder. So if you're familiar with this, very similar. It has a very silky, finely milled kind of feel to it. I'm swatching it, but I don't think you're gonna be able to see this at all. Maybe a little bit right there. Yeah, it's right here. So it's a little bit deeper than my skin tone. I'm just gonna pull out the medium bronzer now, just because I'm curious as to how deep this shade is. And the packaging and everything is exactly the same, of course. And oh, this is beautiful. Yeah, this looks like it's going to be a nice bronzer for my skin tone. So all of these bronzers, well, I should say the 2 bronzers that I have, the fair and the medium, the finish is matte. I think all of them are matte, but I can only speak to the 2 that I have in front of me. So these are matte bronzers. I personally prefer a bronzer with a little bit of something, but I have to admit, matte bronzers are very versatile. You can wear with any kind of makeup look, and you can always add a little bit of shimmer with other things like highlighter and toppers and things like that. So I do think they are the most versatile, but I'm gonna go ahead and start with the fair powder, and I'm gonna apply it as if it's a bronzer just to see if we can see it as a bronzer. And I'm gonna use my Sonia G Sculpt 1 brush. This is the big fan brush here. And I'm just gonna add it right underneath my cheekbones there. Let's see if we can see any kind of shading just the teensiest bit. I think this is going to be a great kind of like overall, like all over my face kind of bronzer in the fall winter time when I'm probably not going to be self-tanning. Who knows? But when I don't self-tan or in the fall winter when I am looking a little bit more pale, I think this is going to be kind of like a great overall bronzer. Yeah, I see a little bit of heat being added like right around here. It's actually quite nice. Again, if you're looking for something really subtle, here's my face with nothing. And then here it is with the bronzer. Do you see that? Just a little bit of warmth. Not bad, not bad. A lot more than I thought looking at this. I'm just gonna drag some over the bridge of my nose, see if we can kind of see anything there. A little bit, a little bit. I don't see much on my forehead. My forehead is pretty tan, so I wasn't expecting to see this kind of show up over there, but I do see it over here a little bit. Let's go ahead and play with the medium bronzer. I'm gonna go ahead and apply it to this side. I'm gonna use a different brush so we don't mix up the shades here. So I'm using my Refer P24 brush. I'm gonna dip in and apply. So there is the medium. And there's the fair. I mean, obviously the medium is much more visible than the fair. The tone of this medium bronzer is just, it is just spot on for me. It's pretty neutral, but it has just the slightest bit of like a peachiness to it. I don't see any kind of like orange twist to it or orange kind of like lean to it at all. So what I'm going to do at the end of this video is I'm going to have to compare this bronzer, the medium and maybe the fair, to all the bronzers that I have in my Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette, those face palettes I have, also to her Sculpt and Glow. And I'm going to hold off until my Roundup bronzer video to kind of compare a whole bunch of different bronzers. I don't want to end up repeating myself, so I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm going to do that in the bronzer roundup video, but I am going to compare this to all the other Charlotte Tilbury bronzer type products that I have in my collection. You know, and considering I don't have any powder down because I was kind of wondering if I could use this as a setting powder, this is actually going on really smoothly. So this is just right over some foundation. All right, I'm just going to add a little bit of the medium over this light just to kind of balance my face out here. And I'm gonna add some of this to the bridge of my nose. The level of pigmentation for this bronzer is amazing too. As soft as this powder is, I really thought I was gonna end up picking up too much, that I was gonna have to spend a lot of time blending out this bronzer, but that is not the case. Like when I go in with my bronzer brush, there's almost like no kick up. I'm getting the amount that I want on my brush, not too much. It's actually really surprising. I really thought there was gonna be a lot of kick up and a lot of kind of powder like left over in the pan, but I'm not seeing that. I mean, there's a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see that. There's a little bit and there's a little bit along the frame, but not much. Not as much as I thought there was going to be considering how soft this powder is. Well, I'm really, really glad I got both. I do feel like the fair is just a really nice kind of subtle bronzer for me. I think it's gonna be great in the wintertime. The medium is gorgeous. The tone of it is what's really kind of blowing me away. There's warmth without the orange tinge, and that to me is a very, very successful bronzer. The formula seems wonderful so far. It blends out beautifully, as you guys can see. It definitely is a matte bronzer. It's not adding any sheen to my skin, but it doesn't look dry on my skin, so that is definitely a plus. But just to give you some info here, the bronzer has 16 grams of product. They are made in Italy and they are good for 24 months upon opening. So those are the bronzers. Very exciting. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of continue on with my makeup, and then we'll come back and I will apply the eyeshadow palette, the Desert Haze eyeshadow quad, and then we'll do some comparison swatches of the bronzers and of this eyeshadow quad. So I will be right back. All right, guys, let's play with the eyeshadow palette. So this is the new Desert Haze eyeshadow quad that has come out with these bronzers. So we've got 4 matte shades in here. Aren't those gorgeous? Wow, these are stunning. You know, these shades in person compared to all the promo shots I've seen online are a little bit more peach versus orange. Like this shade online looks like bright orange, but it's definitely more of a peach, a little bit softer than at least what I've seen online. Could just be me. But yeah, the whole quad looks a little bit softer than it does online. Here are the 4 shades. Beautiful. Well, they definitely swatch a little bit deeper than what I see in the pan, I feel like. So now we're kind of back to it looking like what I saw online. This is a very sultry color story. And this new Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow formula that she's been using for the past several eyeshadow quads is really, really great. I really like this formula. I liked her eyeshadow quads before, but I like them more now. Oh, what's interesting, I'm reading the ingredients on here just quickly out of curiosity. There's diamond powder in all 4 of these shades, which I think is interesting because they're matte. I don't really see diamond powder, what I would think diamond powder looks like, but these are all matte. It is one of the last ingredients in here, but that's interesting. And just FYI, good for 18 months upon opening, and this was made in Italy as well. All right, well, I guess I'm doing a bit of a smoky eye. Was not what I was planning on doing today. So I'm gonna start with, looking at these, I'm gonna use these 3 shades, basically the 3 lightest shades, and then I'm gonna use this one as kind of like a liner or just along my lash line, because I think this one looks dark enough, doesn't it? And that's this shade in here. Doesn't that look so much deeper swatched? So I'm gonna start with that, and I've got my Sonia G Blender Pro brush. I'm just gonna swipe that along my lash line. Ooh, these shadows are so creamy. Blending out easily, beautifully. All right, there's the first color applied. Really, it just blends effortlessly. So I'm gonna go in with the second lightest color, the one up here, same brush, and I'm just gonna add to it. Then I'm gonna take my big fluffy brush. This is the Esem G34 brush, go into the lightest shade and just kind of dust that along the top edge there. Definitely need to add some shadow to my lower lash line. I'm gonna grab my BK Beauty 207 brush. It's this like little domed brush. And I'm gonna go into this first shade that I used, the 3rd deepest color, and add that generously to my lower lash line. And then I'm gonna take the same brush and go into the 2nd deepest shade and add that kind of on top, but a little bit lower than that first shade along my lower lash line. And now I'm gonna go in with my Esem T05 brush and go into the deepest shade here and really get that into my lash line. And I feel like I lost a little bit of that first shadow along my upper lid, so I'm just gonna go back in with that Blender Pro brush. Yeah, just kind of drag that along my lash line. All right, eyeshadow is done. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up my makeup, and I will be right back to do some comparison swatches and just kind of sum up my first impressions, thoughts on these products. So I'll be right back. All right, all done with my look for today. So again, all of the things that are on my face will be down below in my description box if you're interested. And let's go ahead and do some swatching. So I'm gonna start with the bronzers. So first I have the new ones. I have the #1 Fair Airbrush Bronzer. Next to that, I have the new Medium Airbrush Bronzer. Next, I have the bronzer that is in the Instant Look in a Palette Natural Beauty. Then I have the bronzer from the Instant Look in a Palette Seductive Beauty. And then I have the bronzer from the Instant Look in a Palette Smokey Eye Beauty. And then I have the bronzer from the Instant Look in a Palette Beauty Glow. Next, I have the bronzer from the Instant Look in a Palette Stoned Rose Beauty. And then I have the bronzer from the Instant Look in a Palette Gorgeous Glowing Beauty. And then finally, I have the Sculpt powder from the Filmstar Bronze and Glow in the Fair Medium shade. So when I look at all of these swatches, it really looks like the bronzers that have appeared in all of the Instant Look in a palettes, except for maybe the last 2, the Stoned Rose and the Gorgeous Glowing Beauty. The rest of them look very, very cool toned or neutral to cool toned. And then the Stoned Rose and the Gorgeous Glowing Beauty, those definitely are much warmer than the rest. And at least when I look at these swatches, it looks like the new Airbrush bronzer in medium falls in between the neutral and the warm tone bronzers that we have. It doesn't look quite as warm as the Stoned Rose or the Gorgeous Glowing Beauty. Those definitely have a little bit of like an orange tinge in there, but the medium Airbrush bronzer really has like a nice warmth to it, but it's not quite as orangey as those. So again, this sort of illustrates what I love so much about this particular medium toned airbrush bronzer is its tone. It's really, really universal. I think it's going to be flattering for a lot of different skin tones, not exactly skin depth. I mean, obviously you're going to get the shade that works for you. But I think if you have like a pink undertone, if you have more of like a yellow undertone, I think this new airbrush bronzer is going to work for you. At least with the two that I have. Again, the fair is so light you can barely see that swatch. But when I look at the medium, I really feel like it's gonna work for a lot of different undertones. And I think that is fantastic. All right, let's jump into the Desert Haze comparison swatches. So in my swatches here, I have the new Desert Haze at the bottom. And then on top, I have a comparison quad. So I pulled out the other quads that I thought were similar or kind of close to the Desert Haze quad, and it ended up being 3 of them. The first one being Transform Eyes, and that is this quad right here. You can see there's some similarities in there. I feel like the feel of both of the quads are kind of similar, but they definitely are different enough because the finishes in the Transform Eyes, there's 2 shimmers where the Desert Haze is all mattes. And then the Transform Eyes has that gold shade in here that the Desert Haze does not have. And I feel like it just brightens up the entire Transform Eyes quad where you don't really have that with the Desert Haze. So that is the Transform Eyes quad. The next comparison that I thought could be worth doing is the oldie but goodie, the Dolce Vita quad from Charlotte Tilbury. And the Dolce Vita quad has a lot of different finishes in there. And in fact, none of the shades in the Dolce Vita quad are matte. So it is very different from the Desert Haze in that regard. And I feel like the colors are much more subdued and I guess more neutral leaning in the Dolce Vita than they are in the Desert Haze, which I think is funny because I remember when the Dolce Vita first came out, I thought it was such a warm tone palette, which it is, but in comparison to the Desert Haze, it is a little bit cooler than that. And then finally, I compare it to the Copper Charge eyeshadow quad, which is one of her newer ones, and there's only one matte shade in the Copper Charge. And that matte shade is actually very similar to the matte shades in the Desert Haze, but those shimmer shades really keep this Copper Charge quad very, very light and very, very bright. So it has a very different feel from the Desert Haze quad. So those are all the comparison swatches I have for the bronzers, for the Desert Haze eyeshadow quad. I hope you found those comparison swatches helpful. Again, I will be doing a little bit more of an in-depth kind of mini review on the airbrush bronzers when I do a bronzer roundup. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Definitely subscribe to my channel if you are interested in that. So far, no disappointments. I do have very high expectations when it comes to Charlotte Tilbury, and none of these things so far have disappointed. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Please let me know if you have any questions down below in my comment section, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in my next video.